Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later in the program, Dominic Dezzutti joins me to take a look at the governor not being as popular as he used to because he's got to make some hard calls. But first, I wanted to show a girl. This is Amy Oliver Cooke. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you recognized.
It took a while. I want to go over the gun bills the Gov just signed a couple days ago, and particularly from a woman's point of view, why you were so upset about this, and how I don't feel this as a woman's issue. You feel differently about it. So talk to me a little bit about guns and women, why this was such a passionate issue for you. This
was wildly personal.
Wildly personal?
Yeah, it really, no, and I say that, and I truly mean this was incredibly, incredibly personal. Anyone who heard, and I'll start with the testimony on one of the bills that ultimately did die, and it was the ban on concealed carry on college campuses. When you heard these women, think about this, they were begging, don't disarm me with your vote. These are women who are the victims of sexual assault, and they're having to beg a legislative committee not to be disarmed. Everything about that should be, we should be repulsed by that. And the other thing is, as somebody who's had someone come on my property and threaten harm to my family, the idea that there was a state legislature willing to limit my ability to defend myself, and by the way, it was just me and my daughter. I didn't realize this person had just been released from a 72-hour psych hold and had just made a beeline to my house, threatening members of my family. I had no idea that that had happened. But the idea that a state legislature would then decide how much what I can do to defend myself, it was very personal.
Well, let me jump in there for a second. One of the crowing points that I hear from the left is that they were very careful. We didn't take away any guns. This law doesn't take away a single gun. And technically, they're right, but it takes away the magazines you can use for your gun. Come on, 15 rounds. If there's a magazine that can hold 15 rounds, ain't that enough for you?
You know what? If I hear one more man say, if you can't hit something with 10 bullets, then you ought to be a better shot. Yes, little sweetie, you ought to be a better shot. Do you know what it's like law enforcement carries more than 10 rounds, more than 15 rounds, because in a high-stress situation, they're lucky if they unload 30 rounds. They're lucky if they hit a guy their target 3 times.
How do you know this?
Because I just happen to know a few statistics about law enforcement. I'm married to the sheriff of Weld County. So he shared some of those with me, and he also shared with me what it's like, you know, training that they've had in high-stress situations. They know they're not going to hit their target. If you have 15 rounds, the chances of you hitting them all 15 times, next to impossible. And when somebody says, if you can't hit something with 10 rounds, you're assuming an absolutely perfect situation. Your target, your assailant, is just standing there saying, I'll just stand here and wait for you to hit me, as opposed to somebody chasing you.
But can't you can have as many magazines of 15 as you want. Why as a woman why is this a woman's issue, 15 versus 16? What's that last magic bullet?
That might be the one that hits him. That might be the one. This is disproportionately affects women. A bullet is a great equalizer against an assailant. Why do you think women who were the victims of sexual assault were begging not to be disarmed? It's because they know that the one way, well, let me put it this way. They know that limiting their choice in how they defend themselves could open up somebody else to being the next victim of sexual assault. I can't tell you how personal this is. And when they voted to pass these bills, it's like being kicked in the stomach.
Really? Now, I've known you for over a decade, and I don't think I've ever seen you so emotionally attached to a bit of legislation and taking it so personally. Why? Why? I mean, we at the Independence Institute, we work with bills, we work with legislators, we do all sorts of stuff, and you've always been calm, cool, and collected. This one is personal.
I've got 2 daughters. I've got 2 daughters, and one of them I've taught so far. I have one that I've taught her how to shoot, taught her how to handle a firearm safely, and yet she couldn't take that same class today with the same weapon, the same.
Because she'll become a criminal.
Yeah, she'll become.
Let's explain. Oh, go ahead.
But the worst part is I've got a state legislature that is telling me, and a governor who was saying to me, and I think it's patronizing and I think it's condescending, telling me that if you can't hit him with 15 rounds, then, well, frankly.
And you deserve to be raped?
Yeah. It's, you know what? I'm sorry.
Let's explain some of the technicalities, because even if you like the idea of limiting magazines to 15 rounds, this bill is so atrociously written, and they knew it. And we have been talking with them, including the governor's office, up until the point where he signed it. They knew what was in this. And let's talk about the 2 provisions that really make it big. The first one is it outlaws magazines that are that have more than 15 rounds. I've got a Glock 19. This is the 15-round magazine for it. So this would still be legal, you'd think, but it's not legal under the law, because the law says anything that is readily converted to more than 15 rounds. And for those who don't know, let me just take a quick shot at this. I don't know if you want to get a closer view. This is a regular magazine. Almost every magazine has a removable base plate. That removable base plate comes off on this one pretty easily, and it's so that you can clean out the magazine. Here it is. I don't know if you can see this. It's a spring. That's it. They've outlawed a spring. So you need to do this because springs wear out. Go remember your pogo stick. It wore out. But unlike this plate, I can also put on this little plate, which is called an extender. This extender adds a couple extra shots, and they're made for all sorts of magazines by all sorts of manufacturers. It's just a little piece of plastic. So now I take it, I slide it onto there, and now this magazine, my magazine, is 17 shots. And what's important to know, it's not the extender that's illegal under the law. It's what I thought would be a legal 15-round magazine, because it can accept that extender. So almost every magazine in Colorado has a removable base plate. It's what they do.
So my husband can clean it.
Your husband can clean it. So when we said this bans almost every magazine in Colorado, it's because of that terrible language that says any magazine that can be converted.
Right.
Well, that's almost every single magazine in Colorado. So when your daughter is shooting, or you shooting with your 15 shots, you'd be breaking the law.
Right. And criminals don't care. They don't care. It makes no difference to them if it's readily convertible or not. They're going to get the most firepower that they possibly can. And what we've done is limited the ability of the law-abiding citizen to defend themselves, and in particular, women.
Now let's finish the second clause. The second clause in there that is mind-boggling is that if you have this type of magazine, like this is mine, I can keep this. After July 1st, I'm allowed to grandfather this in. I can keep this. But it's not just that I have the ownership of it. The language is very precise. I must, and here are the magic words, maintain continuous possession of it. I must maintain continuous possession of it, which means, ready? Let's zoom out on this one. Let's both commit a crime. Here you go. Now I don't have continuous possession. You have possession.
That's right.
We're now both criminals under this law, which means when you try to teach your daughter how to shoot, you can't give her your gun to shoot with. You'll both be criminals. I can't
even give her the magazine.
Right.
I can't give her the magazine, because one of the things in our class that we took together was we loaded, obviously manually, you loaded your own magazine, trying to be a responsible gun owner, learning how to use a firearm safely and responsibly. And sometimes, you know, some of the women that were in the class with us, their hands would get sore, so we were helping each other load each other's magazines. We can't do that.
You will be criminals to
That's
do it.
right.
Let me go one farther. My brother Paul volunteers as a range officer up at Boulder Rifle Club, and his job, like an air traffic controller, his first job is safety, to run a safe range. And when he volunteers, often he needs to help people with their firearms. Sometimes they malfunction. Sometimes they misfire or misfeed. And if they're not experienced on how to do that, he now can't grab that gun from them and show them how to properly unload it. So it's more dangerous. He was one time, a husband and a wife were trying to learn how to shoot, and they weren't doing a very good job. He went in and said, well, let me show you how you hold it properly, and you do it like this. And by the end of it, she became a great shot. She was enthusiastic. But after July 1st, all three of them will be criminals, because he won't even know what's in that gun. And if it's somebody's magazine and they're not maintaining continuous possession, they're a criminal.
Yeah. And so the people who are learning how to use a firearm safely and responsibly, they're the ones who are penalized in this. And again, I go back to women. It affects women more than men simply because multiple, or even one assailant, we just don't physically have the strength to overcome them. A bullet, a firearm is a great equalizer, and they've just taken away part of that. They've limited our ability to defend ourselves.
You're from Weld County. There is a culture difference here. Colorado was always a very, I don't know, independent-minded state. Even in Denver, when I was growing up 40 years ago, people let people have their own lifestyles. That seems to change, and I feel like there's this pressure between rural Colorado and the progressive downtown Denver crowd. And there's a crowd now that is very much in power that don't understand this. This is, to me, and I remember, I used to hate guns. I was an anti-gunner. I was someone who gave money to handgun control. And it took me a long time to make this transition to a different lifestyle, but this is part of my lifestyle. This is part of who I am. To do the competitions I do, to do the shoots that I do, yes, I use those magazines, those standard capacity magazines. This lifestyle is not respected. I know it's understood, not understood, and people like me are now perverse. But what about the difference between
there's an
rural?
Intolerance. There is a flat-out intolerance of people who have a lifestyle that includes the safe and responsible use of firearms. I mean, learning how to use it. And it's not this gun culture, it's just simply people who have learned how to use a firearm and learn how to use it safely, so we're not scared of it. I think if you knew people who don't know anything about it or haven't learned anything about it, they're the ones who are scared of it. What do we do? Well, in this case, the legislature, to me, looking to limit our ability to exercise that right because, one, I think they're horribly intolerant, and I think they're scared of it.
Amy, thank you so much. I tell you what, before you go, let's commit that crime one more time.
No, that means I have to give it back.
Give it back. Second crime. Stay tuned.